put that away and go here. Okay, so I'm not necessarily going to go through all of the basics with everyone here, because if I'm not mistaken, based on everyone who signed up, I believe you've all been CMS users for a little bit now. So I don't want to go through all of kind of that 101 stuff with everyone, but I will just kind of give you that reminder information just quickly at the beginning. And you can, if at any point I need to repeat anything, or if you did in fact want me to cover something, just let me know. But I do want to make sure that I am covering with everyone here some of the concepts that you might not have been able to learn about because you are offsite after we took part in the redesign. So one of the big things is the fact that the website's mobile friendly. So I definitely want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with what that means for you and your teams, and what that looks like on the website as well. And then just real quick, for those of you who have not heard any of my things before, but my name is Katie Santo, and I'm the Web Training and Content Support Specialist within the Digital Communications Group here at NYU. So I'm the one who sends you all those emails about the CMS, and Jonathan Maynard and I worked trying to figure out the best way to accommodate all of our study away locations, and we thought that this is one of the best ways. And so hopefully this is something that you find valuable and that we can continue doing. And at the end of the training, definitely if there's anything you want to share or you have suggestions for some, like a topic we can do for another one, let me know, because I definitely want to make that happen, because I don't want you all to feel left out because you're not at Washington Square. That being said, I'm just going to do some of that basic stuff that I told you about, just so that I feel comfortable knowing that everyone knows that basic information for logging in, and my kind of golden rules. So just make sure, and it should be a given for all of you, is just being on the VPN and from a Firefox browser. This has come up a few times where maybe there's like a problem that comes up, an error message or a component that's not behaving the way it should be. Always just make sure you're using a Firefox browser, and that also it's up to date. Sometimes if you're experiencing an issue, it's probably because Firefox isn't up to date, or you just have other software updates that need to be run. Maybe it's like a Java update or something with Flash. So just check all of those things just to make sure that the CMS can function properly. And then we do have a new URL. We should have had this communicated to all users. It's orion.cms.nyu.edu. And we do have the new URL because we have more users coming on board, and we want to make sure we can accommodate everyone. So we set up 2 constellations, and you all happen to be a part of the Orion constellation. If you do accidentally go to the old address, the CMS author address, there is just like a note up there that says, if you edit pages under, this nyu.edu or, publichealth.nyu.edu, this is where you go. So it's okay if you don't have this memorized right away. We do have that up in place, but you should update your bookmarks as soon as you can. Because I don't know how long that placeholder will be up. And then your login is your NetID and password. And just make sure that if you ever have to change your password, I had to change mine this morning. My password for logging into the CMS is now my new password. Just remember that. Some people tend to forget. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go into the CMS now. But before I do, I want to make sure that I'm not missing any questions. Nope, all good. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go in. And I have to remember my new password. Excellent. Okay. All right. So just something to keep in mind that I always want people to know when I log in. I am an administrator, so I have a lot of extra things that show up for me. When you log in, you're only seeing websites, digital assets, and tagging. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So I mentioned this. I'm not going to go in through basics, but I am going to go through and go to your pages so we can start doing some other CMS training here. Like I said, if at any point, just stop me and I will kind of double back for you. So when we go into your site admin, which is this view, your pages, I'm sure you have noticed, have moved. They're now under NYU Global Centers. And what makes everyone that works in a study away location special, you probably have noticed, is that you have different templates. So when you go to our CMS training website and you go to look up any tutorials or anything like that, you'll notice that your templates aren't included there. But for the most part, they're the same as our general templates. The only thing that's different is that you have some custom things built in. That way, all of the different study away locations are going to have that same, excuse me, like the same header, the same footer, things like that. So just keep that in mind. In 1 second, I'm hearing beeps on my thing, so I just want to make sure that there's nothing going on in chat. Okay. All right. So yeah, so just keep that in mind. And then the names, if we go all the way to the right here, let's see if I can, I have a very small computer screen, so I have to do this very creatively. Okay, so if we look at the template names over here on the far right, and we go into, let's go into Buenos Aires. So if we go into one of the, over here, you'll see that if I was actually able to get the full name to show up, there we go. You have study abroad, just a content template, and then this one is the content template with sidebar. So like I said, the same basic concepts, it's just that yours has that some special things built into it so that everything's standard, okay? So a couple of other things about your templates, and not everyone, I don't believe everyone has access to this, but just in case you do, I just want to point this out. Oh, I don't even have access. Okay. When you're adding a new page, there's a landing page, a study abroad content template with sidebar, and just a regular content template. And so, like I said, these are the two that are basically the same as what all the non-study away centers, not basically the non-study away people use. But this top one is unique to study away in that these are those top level pages that you're going to be using for, and I've got Abu Dhabi up here as an example. So living in Abu Dhabi, academics, student life, calendar, admitted students. So once you actually go to your center page, your location page, those first child pages. So the parent page is Abu Dhabi, that first level of pages. So on the left-hand side over here, that first level should all be using those landing pages. And that will just give you a slightly different design template. And then when you go into those child pages, so if we go into academics, then we start seeing those content templates, okay? So I don't believe anyone is actually going to be adding any of those top level pages, but if you are, that would be the process for doing it, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and let's just do Buenos Aires because I picked you guys before. Okay, so I'm gonna just make a test page in here, and I hope no one minds. just not going to do it in academics. There we go, this is better. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to show everyone in here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new page, and I'm going to name it test. This is for two purposes. One, because I want anyone in Buenos Aires to know that this is not a real page, and two, just because the same thing as number one, just emphasizing it. Okay, so we have our two template options here. I'm going to go ahead and start with this content template with sidebar. So study abroad, content with sidebar, and hit create. So you'll notice that even though we redesigned the actual NYU website, actually using the CMS, that part has not changed. You still make pages the same way. All of these icons about whether or not a page is published or modified are the same. So that part's good. So the functionality is still the same. So I'm still going to double click to go ahead and go into my edit mode. But you'll notice that some of this is different, right? So this looks a lot different than it did before. Now, one of the first things that you'll notice, and I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out just a little bit on here, is that depending on the screen size that you have. So remember, the new website is mobile friendly. It's mobile responsive, if you will. So depending on your actual browser size, I happen to be conducting this training using an 11-inch MacBook Air. So I have a very tiny screen. So I have to constantly zoom out during my trainings so that everyone can actually see the full content and there not be a problem. So if you are working on a smaller screen as well, you may actually see the content on your page in a mobile responsive view. For example, so what is she talking about? I will show you. So let me just go to housing, and I'm just going to make the browser a little bit smaller. And here we go. So we have all of the content here. If you're on a smaller browser, do you notice how things kind of just snapped and changed location quickly there? So these three promos were actually all next to each other. So there we go. So on a wider browser, you'll see everything the way it's intended to view and the max size. But if you're using a smaller browser window, or you've resized it so you can view something else, or like me, your screen is just really tiny, just keep in mind that how the content looks on the live site is also how it will look while you're editing the content in the CMS. So that can throw people off at first, especially if they just weren't expecting that and they didn't know how responsive the design was. So it will be reflective in here. Okay, so excuse me. So Sidekick hasn't changed in its purpose. There have been some things added to it. So you may recall, if you read through any of that material that we sent out about the redesign, that we actually got rid of several promo components. If we go to this promo section now, we have three. We have a basic promo, a button promo, and the event calendar promo. And if we go up to general, we'll see that they're mostly here, and then we have some new ones. The audio and video player are now the media player. They've been combined. We have this new component called Follow Us. It's for social media. And speaking of social media, we also have a social feed. So you can embed your Facebook feed directly into your page if your study away location has a Facebook feed. And then we've redesigned a lot of them as well. And then we'll definitely talk about column control more in depth when we talk more about the site being mobile friendly. So I do want to highlight some of those features for you because I think, well, Contact Us is my favorite new component. So I'm definitely going to show it to you, but also just because these have been things that our users have been asking for, and we've seen different things and the way users have been creating, Contact Us in particularly, they've been creating their own version of that component. So we'll go ahead and highlight that. So again, components are going to work exactly like they did before. I'm just going to zoom in so it's nice and big for everyone to see. And hopefully it won't be distorted. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it and drop it. Oh, that's column control. I'm going to go ahead and, so this is what happens when I do something wrong. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Yes, I took the wrong component. Oh no. Okay, so let's try this again. Contact Us. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so as we can see, Contact Us, like several of our other general components, it does not have that toolbar up at the top, which means to edit this component, you just right-click or double-click on it, and then select Edit. And again, that authoring experience isn't changing. So we have tabs and checkboxes, and you'll notice that things will come up as you mark them off. So Contact Us, like I said, new favorite component. So this is an optional header up at the top here. Most of our users have been using Contact Us as their header text. Personally, on my pages and the pages for my department, we've been using Need Help, mostly because that's the nature of our department and the work that we do. But for most of you, you probably would just want Contact Us. And then you only need to select one method. You can select all three, but you have to have at least one. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what all three would look like though. So in person, you have the option to show a map, which is really cool. It will show a Google map. If you are working in a location where Google Maps aren't allowed or can't get to, then this might not work correctly. But I'm going to go ahead and just mark that. And then optional text. So maybe if you have like specific hours, or just you want to reference what this office is or something like that. So, walk-in hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's a terrible thing. I don't like the way this looks, but I just want to show you what it looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and just put an address in. This is a New York address. I'm sorry, I'm using a New York example. New York, 11. Oh my, what is our zip code? 10012. Let's see if I have the zip code right. And then if necessary, you can add the country. But this should be okay for me because I'm in the States. And so you can see that's that text right over there. And that's my map, which is quite lovely. This is more like actual size. Okay, so some of those other tabs, just to walk you through. If my computer wants to stop being slow. Okay, so either my computer or the CMS is going really slow right now. There we go. Okay. So that optional text we can see right here, just is going to be bold format. So keep that in mind. So my walk-in hours is probably not the best text right here. So I'm just going to write header text. So online. So this is really great for these online options. So this is also optional text. So you would just click this button to add item. So you can either do an email or a web page, and you can add as many of these as you'd like. So the email address, I would recommend whenever and wherever possible, if you're going to use this, that your display text be something that's short and will display nicely in this column width, okay? You'll notice that this particular template, this content template with sidebar, is very similar to a 4-1 on the old design, or the 3-2, but with a narrower sidebar. So just keep that in mind, that this isn't necessarily going to be the widest column, and we can't resize it. So if you have text, a display text, and it's all one word smushed together, it's not going to display very nicely. So from that aesthetic perspective, your page just won't look too good with that particular line. So if you can, see, Buenos Aires team. I'm not sure what kind of teams you guys might have or what email addresses you may have, but oops. So I'm just making them up. Okay, so I don't even know if this is a real address. So I'm just throwing random things in here, but maybe you have an email address you guys want to have up there. Maybe you have another email address, and maybe it's, NYU Study Away, if you want to put that up there. Maybe you have a web page you want to have up there. Maybe it's like a form or something like that. So apply now or something like that. So you can either type in an external website, or just like adding a link, how you normally would in text, you can use the Pathfinder here and navigate to and find a link. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on a random thing. So it'll do that for you. So now I have all of these, and if I hit OK, I'll show you what those look like. And what's great, so that fit nicely there. And there's an icon that will show email, or website. And so you can have multiple of these. And this just displays nicely rather than the full email address. Let me show you what an actual email address will look like, just because we do have some users, some locations, like some departments that will type in a full email address as the display text. And it doesn't really look nice. It doesn't look too nice. So if I use mine, and just one quick note, you'll notice, unlike adding an email address as a link in text, you don't have to type in mail to, okay? That's not necessary here. This particular component is already built knowing that there might be an email address, so it's going to take care of that for you, okay? So let's see what my email address looks like on here. It might look good, it might not. There we go, it does not look good. So you'll notice that a lot of, and my email address isn't even that long, but this is what's gonna happen. It's gonna wrap like this. So if you're okay with that, fantastic, go ahead and do it. But for the most part, this looks so much nicer. So that's what we would recommend. Plus, it gives a little bit more context as to what is this email address? Why is it up here? So it kind of explains what it is. And then lastly is phone. So phone, this is the one that I actually got the most questions about when I was initially teaching people about this component. And I do want to show a really cool, it's not really a trick or anything like that, but it's a cool thing that you can do in this particular component. So you'll notice that it's going to say phone here no matter what. So that is, it's not optional, it's just in there. And then we also have the optional text. And then you can add in your phone entry. So the question that I kept getting was, well, what happens if you have a phone number and a fax number? Well, you could do P for phone. And then you can do 1, 2, 3. Boop. 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you can add another one, and you do F. You do 2 and 2, 1, 2, 3, and you can do that. So you can do the P for phone and F for fax, or if in the country you are working in, it's a different letter for phone versus fax, you can do that, or you can actually write it out, phone and fax. You can also put it at the end, but it will allow you to type a letter in there, which is awesome. So now I have my phone, so that's that bold, and my optional text is going to be just like a plain text. And so I have my phone and my fax in here. They're both allowed. And I'm just going to zoom out so you can see. It looks pretty cool. And so this would be great for a page if you have an About Us page, or if you're doing something for admissions. Definitely take advantage of this component if you haven't already, because you can do it once, and if you then use this component in conjunction with our reference component right over here, you can have this living on that one page and then reference it elsewhere, and you only have to update it in the one location. So it could definitely save you a lot of editing trouble, a lot of editing work. Also want to call out the other new component in here, the Follow Us one. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in here. Okay, sorry I keep coughing, everyone. All right, and again, this is just going to be something that we right-click to edit. And so if your study away location has any social media, this would be a great way to do it. So connect with us, yay! Okay. I don't recommend using that many exclamation points in real life. So what you do is you select the social media platform from the drop-down menu. And we even have WeChat and Weibo, which is great because I know that is something that I think they use in Shanghai. So we made sure to get multiple platforms there. You can select it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll do Facebook. Now, this is the one that's not necessarily, oh, we did add it. Excellent. So you need to make sure you have the full address, including the http://. This is called a protocol. The protocol is required. Make sure you have that. And then you can add the full, facebook.com/NYU. Then you have the full thing. And what's great is once you add it, let me add one more. I'll add Twitter. Twitter.com/New York University. Okay, so once you add them, you have the icons just over here. It's great. And then if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you'll notice that it has the links so users can click and follow them. If you go to my CMS training page, I'm going to do a shameless plug right now, and you go to the component tutorials, and you go to the one for Follow Us. There's actually instructions here on how to find out what the username is for each service. The only ones that I don't have on here are Weibo and WeChat, just because I don't speak Chinese and I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm going to figure it out so I can have it on here. But the instructions on how to do all of that are up here for everyone. So it will be easier for you to figure out what it is. And you'll also see that the format's in here. I should update it to put the dub in there too. But that is for for Follow Us. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and you can't really see it with this particular component, but I'll show you with this one. Let's see. Okay. All right. So You'll notice as I hover my mouse over this and this component is highlighted in the green that even though the space it's in is wider and it kind of goes from edge to edge, I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen and you can't see I'm pointing at my screen. So the green box kind of fills all that, but the component itself kind of stops about halfway. That's because we did put a size limitation on all of our components that kind of have special features like this. So Contact Us is one of those components where this image here is never going to go. It's never going to get bigger than this. So you'll see that as you're using different components that they don't necessarily look good in bigger spaces. So you might want to put them in a narrower one. So I just wanted to let you know that if you see something like this happen, it's not a mistake. It is supposed to happen. So just wanted to call that out for you. Okay, I'm going to delete this. And I wanted to just show you, I'm not going to show you how to use a rich text editor, but I just want to show you some new features in there that we added, because I'm going to take a leap of faith that everyone knows how to add rich text. But before I do that, I will just remind everyone, if you are copying text, please use this paste as text feature, okay? It's right over here. So just as a reminder, don't paste formatted text. So anything that's coming from Word, if your supervisor emailed you something, even if it's from a Google document, something like that, no formatted text in here. So just go ahead and do paste as text. This will ensure that there's no problems on your page and that you can edit your page without a problem. Okay. All right. So I do want to call out a couple of things. So we updated the block quote text. This is really pretty. And I said that. Okay. So I'm going to highlight this whole thing. I'm going to put it in a block quote. So you can't see in rich text really that it's in a block quote. And if you, depending on how dark your screen is, this is going to be a light gray. And you'll notice that because of how I did the paragraph, it's actually in there twice. There's 2 quotation marks on the left-hand side. So to fix that, we do Shift Enter. And so this is how we typically style, how we in our department typically style the block quote. So you have the quote itself, you do a Shift Return, and then you would bold the person who says it. So that's the block quote. So if you have any actual quotes to include on your page, this is really nice because, like I said, it has that style quotation mark over here on the left-hand side. Let me also show you one other thing in here. Call out text is also really pretty. So there's also something called call out text. It's over here under style. And again, it's not going to show up in the rich text editor that this style is applied. But if your cursor is on the text, it'll say it up here at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And so it takes on the fancier font. This font, by the way, is called Mercury. And then it also has what we call a deck style. So that's our NYU Violet. And then depending on how long that text is, so let me just go ahead and make it much longer. Okay. It can look really nice on a page. So if there is maybe like a mission statement, or if you get really creative with how your page is laid out, almost like a pull quote in a magazine or a newspaper article, this would be really a really good use for that. So those are just two things that I wanted to show you from our rich text editor. So now what I'm going to do is I want to go into the column control and really show you how that is affecting your pages and being mobile friendly. So I'm just going to drop this in there, and I'm also just going to quickly check to see if I'm missing any questions that have come in. Nope, we're good. Okay. All right. So in the old design, the website, if you recall, used what we call a grid system. So you had 5 columns that separated out all of your content. However, now we use percentages, and so it's definitely working a little bit differently, because everything is kind of adapting to screen size. So we have those percentages so that, you know, you can do 3 columns, but instead of it being a fixed width, it's going to always be, 33.3333% of the screen. You can do 2 columns. Let me bring up. So you can do 2 columns, but you can do 2 columns where one is 25 and one is 75, one is 66, one is 33, and you can also swap them. You can do 50-50. So we definitely have a lot of options there. And then the other thing to keep in mind is this sidebar. So as you go down to a smaller device, what happens to the sidebar? And we are going to go and do all of that. So no, I don't want to delete that. Okay. So let me just quickly throw some content in here. So I'm just going to put my 2 things in here real quick, and I'm just going to use this one as a really quick example, so you can kind of just see. Whoa, that looks weird. Okay. All right. So if I preview this page, okay, I want you to pay attention to the contact us as I get smaller, and you'll notice that it disappeared, okay? And it didn't fully disappear, it's just now at the bottom of the page. And then as we continue to go down, this doesn't look right. I'm gonna have to double check your templates, everyone, because there we go. It should stay at the bottom of the page. So I have to double check at that one breakpoint why it did that. So yeah, it should just stay at the bottom of the page, and your content will reflow. Everything will reflow underneath it. This doesn't look right. This shouldn't be over here. So ignore this particular breakpoint. This doesn't look right. But what happens is that after a certain point, this component, this whole column, jumps right underneath everything. And that's how it should work. So I'm writing that note down to have my team take a peek at that and make sure it's okay. Reflow on study away. Excellent. And if that is accurate, then I will make sure that I update my tutorials. It's a learning moment for everyone. So you notice, though, that this text is on the left and this text is on the right. That will always reflow to be left and right, so that the text on the left is above the text on the left. I'm sorry, the text on the left is above the text on the right if it ever gets stacked, okay? I have a much better example of this I can show you here. And that is because there's an option on here for column control that splits your content up into thirds. Right about here, 3 columns. And that's the option that confuses most of our users because, okay, boop, boop, boop. So it confuses most of our users because you have an option. You can actually, the column control containers, you can stack them. So let me do this. Edit. Make it 3. So I'm just going to make a column control with that. And so we can see this better. I'm also going to change the template type, by the way, by going into page properties over here and template. So all of you can do this, by the way. It's under page properties and then template, just so that we can see this work better. Okay, so I've changed it, so now it's 3, okay? So if I have 6 things that I need to put on my page, I have the option to do 1 column control, and I can just keep adding components, and I can, keep dragging them right in here and plop them in directly underneath, or I can take a column control component and I can stack it on top of another column control component. So there's 2 different ways to do that. So now I have 2. And I want you to take a peek at how this works. So in this example here, they're stacked. So these 2 rows, A, B, C, and D, E, F, are 2 separate instances. So exactly like this. You have 1 instance up top and then another one right down here. And when we reflow, you'll notice that that 3rd column falls underneath, and it falls underneath here as well. So you have that little white space here and the white space here, okay? The option to split your columns in thirds, this is the only one that kind of creates that weird design question of, well, how do you want your content to look like when it reflows? Which is why I bring it up and why I do focus on it, because this is the one that confuses most users. So it stacks like this. Most people ask, well, how come D does not come up in this empty space? And it's just because they live in separate containers. Your other option I mentioned was if you use a single container, which means that this is just one container and the components are stacked on top of each other inside. So if I were to throw in the divider here, so that's a divider, that's a very faint divider. If I were to throw an image in, okay, so if I were to just put something in there, so let me just, and cool. So it's all in one. So I've got multiple components in a single container. So that's what this example is. So when I make this one smaller, you'll notice that you now have A, B, D, E, A, B, D, E, and then C, F, okay? So that 3rd column, everything sticks together because of how they're arranged. They're buddies, okay? So A and D are in a single column, B and E are in a single column, and C and F are in a single column. So they're all going to stick together. So depending on how you want your design to look, if you've got multiple things, so just keep that in mind. There are creative alternatives if that's something that you and your team are just like, I do not like that, I don't want to do that. But I have that on here, and it is on our tutorial page, so you can definitely play with it. I put this up specifically for users to go and resize their browsers, so that way they can kind of get a feel for it themselves. So we have that here as well for you to play around with. And then the last thing I want to show you, because I do want to make sure that any questions you have, I can take your questions. The last one I want to show you is the basic promo. I just really like this promo, so and it's taking over basically most of the promos that we had previously. So you do have a lot of options with it. And where is it? There we go. And you'll see it does have that edit toolbar. And to use the basic promo, the only thing that is required is a title and a link. And just like adding a link with anything else, you use that Pathfinder. And again, I see all this extra stuff just because I'm an admin, so you can just ignore that. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick a random link and hit OK. So those are the only things that are required to make this promo happen. Let me just go ahead and delete this. So I'm just going to delete these column control components so that we have more space on our page. You'll also notice that when I'm deleting the column control now, all the content also gets deleted. Okay. So I mentioned before that there sometimes is a max width for a component. This is another example of it. The basic promo will never be wider than this, which also means that if you decide to have an image, an optional image with your basic promo, let's go ahead and throw one in here. Let's go ahead and get the Bobcat. My go-to sample image. Here we go. So we do crop, and it's a 4:3 ratio. We hit OK. So there's a max size for this image. So if anyone, if any of the Study Away locations, if you use custom graphics in your promos, there is a maximum size that the images will be, and I will email that out. Email custom size. Just writing a note for myself. I'll email that out just so that you have it. I believe it's 450 by 338, but I just want to double check because it is a new number that it's very different from the old sizing that we had before. So the basic promo here, that image, like I said, is optional. You can also add optional text at the bottom. And you also have, there's a style choice down here. You can make it light or bold. And when we switch the style, you'll see that it goes to a purple with a white text. And so you can have as much or as little as you'd like. And again, the only requirement is that you have a title and a link in it. So you should hopefully get a lot of use out of this promo component. Okay. So that was the last one that I wanted to show you, and I do want to make sure that I have time to take any questions that you have. And obviously you can also email me with questions. But what questions do we have about the CMS and some of those new components that I showed you, or if there's something else that you were using and you weren't sure how to do it, I would be more than happy to help you out with that. I'm going to make sure that you should all be fine for asking. Any questions? No questions? We good? Okay, well, if anyone thinks of any questions, feel free to email me and I will be more than happy to answer them for you. And let me just put up, oops, let me hide this. Before we go, let me just put up my don't forgets that I know you all have been using CMS before, but review your content to make sure it's mobile friendly. So, I showed you that column control and how it reflows. Also look at the text on your pages and look on your pages from a mobile device if you can. And if it's kind of scrolling kind of long, and it's think about how your users are actually going to see that. So if you're reading through it and you're like, wow, this is too much for me to read on my mobile phone, think about your users as well. If there's sentences or parts that don't need to be there, if you can separate things out to multiple pages, think about that. But there's always exceptions to every rule. Sometimes a page has to have a lot of content. It has to be content heavy. And then also think about, maybe the particular content on your page is not going to be used by someone on a mobile device. It's almost entirely going to cater to a desktop user. I'm a good example of that. My content is almost always going to be used by someone who's visiting while on a work computer. So my need to make sure something is mobile friendly isn't as high as, let's say, someone who works with student activities. As always, don't forget to activate your pages. So if you see that blue icon in Site Admin on one of your pages and you're like, oh, how come my pages didn't go up yet? Make sure that you hit activate. That blue means modified, and those changes won't actually go live until you hit that button. And if you're seeing that your changes aren't live yet, even though you hit activate, try refreshing your browser cache. That usually will do it. The same with digital assets. Just make sure that those are activated before you use them on your pages. And then I already told you to remove your formatting, so you should be fine there. And then the same thing, if you have any special characters in your file names, so asterisks, parentheses, things like that, just make sure that you have them removed before you upload your files. And I did make sure that our tutorials online for that last point are updated, so it gives more of an explanation on why we don't want to do that. Okay, so I already opened up for questions, and these are just some resources that we have. We do have all the tutorials, like I said, online. None of the template references are going to specifically reference Study Away, but if I find out that there is something specific that I need to do for you as a user group, I will definitely add that on there. But for the most part, just grain of salt. Okay, I'm looking at this, but I know that mine is slightly different, but the spirit of the tutorials are going to be the same for you as users. And you can always email me if you have a training related question. Otherwise, technical support, IT can help out with that. And then if you did have any, like I said, suggestions on what you might want another training to be, you can let me know. And then Jonathan Maynard is also another great resource. Okay. And thank you so much for joining me this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is, for wherever you are. I really appreciate you doing that. Oop, we have a thing. Yes, so that is it. And I will make sure that I have this posted for you to share, and then I'll also email some of the other videos and stuff that we have online. So thank you very much.